Hello and welcome to this tutorial. My name is Amanda. I'm a hand embroidery artist, and in this video I wanted to share with you how to make an embroidered lavender sachet. You need just a few basic sewing supplies. I had a few ribbons on hand and some muslin I'm going to use, as well as an embroidery needle and some embroidery floss. For the filling, I ordered some natural lavender on Amazon. You can find the traceable design as well as the colors that I used in the blog post that I linked below. First, you'll want to cut some 4" by 4" squares of fabric, or however large you want the sachet to be. I went ahead and transferred the design using a friction heat erasable pen and traced it through to the fabric. Next, I embroidered one of the squares of fabric, and I chose a couple of shades of purple and a couple of shades of green, and I am using 3 strands of embroidery floss. For the lavender flowers, I kept it pretty simple. I started at the very tip of each of the stems and I just split stitched down each of them. For the flowers, I grabbed some of my purple floss and I used some straight stitches at the very top of the lavender sprigs for the smaller flowers. Then when I got more towards the middle and towards the bottom of the sprig, I did some bullion knots. These are way easier to do with a milliner's needle if you have one. It basically just has the same width eye as the shaft of the needle, and it makes it a lot easier to pull it through. Usually when I do bullion knots, I just grab the fabric with my needle, but because these are so small, I felt like it was a little bit hard to do that way. So I just placed the needle from the back of the fabric through, and then I did my little twists. I did about 7 or 8 per bullion knot. The key to these is to keep the twist pretty tight, and then you can just kind of push up against the bottom of the knot to pull it tight and to get all of the slack out of it. To make these look a little bit more interesting, I did combine some straight stitches and some bullion knots together to add kind of a more interesting and textured looking flower. So some of the petals are a little bit smaller looking. And I also randomly placed different shades of purple. I had a dark and a light that I used. So there's not really like a rule of thumb for this. I just kind of winged it and just kind of went by eye to see what I thought it needed. I started with a dark green color at the base, and then I blended out from that dark green color and used a lighter green color for the tips of the leaves. And this is the only part of the embroidery that I used one strand for. I just think it's a lot easier to blend colors together when you're using the long and short stitch that way. The ribbon is totally optional, but I did turn the stitch length all the way up on my sewing machine and sewed along the edge of the ribbon to gather it. So I did this wrong the first time. I'm trying to put ruffles on, and the ruffles need to be facing inward inside of the 2 layers. I did it wrong and I had to seam rip all. So I have sandwiched everything together. The ruffles are on the inside, the ribbon that I'm using to attach to the top is on the inside, and now I'm gonna sew around this. But I need to stop and leave an opening I think I'm gonna leave an opening along the bottom because it'll be a less obvious place once I have to close it with a whip stitch. So I'm going to start along probably the bottom here and just sew around and leave about like 2 inches of room so I can fill this in before I close it. Once I sewed the sachet, I went ahead and trimmed the corners. It'll just allow you to have a crisper corner once you turn everything right side out. Next, you'll turn everything right side out. If you have a pencil or some sort of awl, it will help to make sure that the corners are nice and defined. Finally is the fun part. You can just grab like a spoon or whatever you have on hand to scoop the lavender into the sachet. Somehow I did not get the footage for this, but I closed the sachet with a stitch. It was basically just like a very short and small running stitch. And then you can just tie the ribbon in a bow and it's ready to hang up. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you like embroidery content, please consider liking and following, and I'll see you in the next video.